Okay, so Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire just came out, and I'm very proud of Obsidian for doing a wonderful production over the years, and all the updates and all the information that Josh has come out with in his team. It looks like a great game in terms of gameplay, but I'm here to talk about why the Pillars of Eternity setting, or at least the first game, does not warrant a sequel, let alone is worthwhile, and the second one might not also be. The first game I held back and I played all the way to the end, and there's been lots of problems with the story and the characterization and all the interesting things that would make you want to play an RPG of that style. And I don't believe it was very memorable, let alone worthwhile to be made into a sequel. Although, again, anything can change that. It's how you write, it's how you express an idea, not necessarily the ideas themselves. But we can easily look at the synopsis or the plot or the basic premise of these concepts and see whether or not they're going to go very well, or how easy it is to tell that story well if the foundation is not solid. So let me imagine that I'm feigning ignorance. I don't know nothing about the game. I've never played it. And I read a plot synopsis on Pillars of Eternity. I'll go to the wiki page. And here it is. Okay, so the player is a foreigner who arrives in the Direwood. Their caravan is hit by a mysterious storm that kills everyone but them. Taking refuge in a cave, the player character witnesses some cultists performing a ritual on the machine that can strip souls from their bodies. Exposed to these energies, the player character becomes a watcher, a person able to read souls. The player character also becomes awakened, able to access memories of their past lives. Okay, so two things are happening here. He's able to somehow read a soul, whatever that means, if you want to go into your Cartesian dualism on the mind. That's wonderful philosophy stuff to read about. And then on top of that, they can become the awakened, which allows them to access memories of their past lives. So now we're dealing with a secondary aspect, which is kind of a joke when we talk about past lives and crazy people thinking they were Napoleon and what have you. So already the story is it's got a mountain to conquer. It's got a hill to overcome, hopefully a hill. And how it does that depends on how much meaning and value you can understand of the metaphysics of this world and the character and the protagonist and all the characters with you. So we then discover that this curses the Watcher with waking visions and an inability to sleep. In time, the Watcher will go insane from this, so they must track down the cultists and reverse the curse. Okay, so now we know there's some stakes here. It's if you don't do anything, you're going to go insane. And there's other stakes as well. So the other stake is there's a Hollowborn plague, so that because of what is going on in the physical world, this is caused by the antagonist, children are being born without souls. So souls are now this materialistic thing. Okay, fine. So we have stakes. Now, what then has to be rammed down our throats or constantly shown to us is that you are going to go insane very quickly. You have to do something now, and you have to go. And the world itself is having this Hollowborn plague that people are gonna realize this, that their child that was just born is soulless or has no animus, has no, the baby's not crying, they're not playing, they're not doing anything. That has to be a big problem, which will allow you and your companions to come along with you and have a good reason to keep going in this linear fashion to stop the bad guy. Now, for the life of me, I only remember two characters that had any real value, and that was Aloth and the Grieving Mother. The bad guy was named Thanatos, or I don't know, something like that. He was the death dude. Essentially the villain from Torment, Tyranny. He kept being reincarnated or transferring bodies or some nonsense like that. Who cares? So Aloth was the awakened version, or he was another awakened dude, so he can recall past memories like you can. So it's a nice mirror to the protagonist. It's always a good little writing tool. Cool. The other one was called Grieving Mother, and she was, I don't know, the personification of the effects of that Hollowborn plague thing that the antagonist was doing. That's it. That's all I remember. Everything else, all the characters, all the conflicts meant very little to me, and they were completely not memorable. Something to do about gods being immaterial or being invented so that they can impose their will upon humanity or the people so that they wouldn't kill each other off. I don't remember. I don't care. It was not very memorable. It was not very interesting. And the gameplay reflected that. You would have all these random characters, NPCs that you would just click on and they would tell you their past lives because you had that ability to read past lives. And you're like, oh, this guy was a farmer and he killed his wife, or someone killed his wife. And you're like, I don't give a flying crap. This is boring. This is stupid. What has anything to do with stopping Thanatos or whatever, Thanos or whatever the dude's name was? I can't remember. Like that was how immaterial the majority of the narrative and the majority of the gameplay of exploration involved. So the real time with pause elements, the exploration really didn't lend itself to doing anything in this game that had meaning. Compare that to Planescape Torment, where the adventure and the exploration allowed you to discover parts of the Nameless One. So there were items you found that were from your past experience. There were memories that you could have that that jogged back into your brain, and you could go, oh wow, I remember doing this and all these horrific things that happened. And there were people who actually remembered you. So those elements of adventure and exploration complemented the story, the thrust of the plot, who you were, what you are, what you did in your previous lives, and what you had to do now to fix things. So that all worked. The characters all worked. There were characters that had direct relationships to you. There was Mort. They had the biggest relationship to all. He was with you almost throughout the entire time. There was Dakan. You helped him. He was chained to you, and all the philosophy behind his religion. There was Ignis and Valor. They were kind of the darker versions of you that you helped them. Well, you pretty much imprisoned them and caused them to go crazy. They all had this big relationship to the character, and this is what exploration involves, discovering yourself. Then there was Anna. I think she represented the emotions or passions of the character. There was Fall from Grace. She represented the intellect, the sophistication, as well as the contradictions of the character. Then there was Nordum, which is just, I don't know, cute logic, whatever, it doesn't matter. There was lots of elements and characterizations that worked and complemented the story and the gameplay. Everything worked well. So, and there's even a literal ghost haunting you, and it's, again, a very common and redundant storytelling device. So this all surrounded the theme of redemption, if you chose to act in such a way, what it meant to be the protagonist, what it meant to be the Nameless One, why you needed to die, and what the quest to do so, of how to go about killing yourself. That was Planescape Torment. I remember a lot about that game. I could talk about that for a while. And there was another game that uses the real-time with pause system effectively, and I thought that was Tyranny. Not everyone agrees with me. That's totally fine. This is not the most amazing game in the world, but I thought it worked well. So in Tyranny, you are the servant of an archon of an overlord, and you're the servant of justice. So you enact the will of the overlord through justice, and you enact these edicts. And when you enact these edicts, they're kind of like a weapon of mass destruction, and you absorb someone's power. So you can actually use some of that power, and you end up becoming an archon yourself. And there's all these choices to be made, and the archons that would serve Kairos might be serving you at the end. And all the characters represented the factions of the various groups found within Kairos' empire. So there were the two main factions. I think there was Barrack and Verse, and then another one was another Archon. Her name was Siren, and she had the power to control people with her voice to join the empire. Then there was like some scholar character. There was some rebel character, and it all worked out. It all made sense. Each of the scenarios made sense. How it built up. Maybe it didn't end very well, but it all connected. And this did not work at all, I thought, in Pillars of Eternity, where it just dragged on. There were all these elements that didn't have any meaning and didn't focus on what it meant to be a watcher and why why all these other characters were with you along the way. Now let's look at, again, I haven't touched Pillars of Eternity 2. I know a lot about the gameplay, but I don't know anything about the story. So let me just go to the wiki again, and there's a synopsis there. So let's just read that. So Deadfire is a direct sequel to Pillars of Eternity, taking place in the world of Eora. As with the first game, the player assumes the role of the Watcher, a character with the ability to look into other people's souls and read their memories, as well as the ones of the past lives. So they can actually import their save game, and I'm sure some storytelling elements pop up. That's cool. So Eothas, the god of light and rebirth, who was believed dead, awakens under the player's stronghold called Kea Nua. Eothas destroys the stronghold and leaves the player near death. The player character travels to the Deadfire archipelago to pursue Eothas and seek answers. Players' actions and decisions in the first game influences the gameplay and storyline of Deadfire. Okay, so here we have a Godzilla-like setting premise that can devolve very quickly into really bad ideas and really bad expressions of those ideas, as you can watch with any Saturday morning kids cartoon of giants fighting people. So that has to be subverted somehow. Maybe the giant god, the Colossus of Rhodes sized villain is teleporting. He doesn't crush everything in his wake. He becomes intangible. Who knows? So automatically there has to be something like that. And that has to be the focus of at least half the story. So this is a walking Godzilla character. We have to stop him. And we have to see what the Godzilla character does, which is kind of funny when I say that sentence. Or you show the after effects of what, you walk through a village and everyone's dead. And that would be how you should get companions. They say, oh, my whole village is destroyed, my whole city is destroyed, I want to stop that thing. And so the story would be about, the majority of the story would be about this thing causing destruction and you trying to stop it. The second part of the story would have to be about you going around and figuring out how to stop a goddamn giant. Because I'm quite sure it wouldn't be that simple. So you'd have to go in the opposite direction. Now, from what I understand, this is like a pirate adventure. You have a boat and you have to travel all over the place and get help. That should make some sense. But again, it's how it's done. And already you have a giant hurdle, a literal giant hurdle to overcome to make this not a joke, to make these characters matter and make the protagonist matter. Because the protagonist is the same dude from the first game. And I don't remember a goddamn thing about him aside from being bored and him telling me a bunch of stories about NPCs I didn't care about. So I don't think it's worthy of a sequel, but the story does not. The story has to be very careful and very laser focused to deal with the Godzilla setting or the Godzilla predicament and how to go about navigating a world where the player character has to go in the opposite direction to then take 5 steps back, go 6 steps forward, sort of scenario. And when you have a real-time with pause game, that's a lot of exploration and gameplay just to figure out how to stop the big baddie. So on that premise alone, again, I don't know how it expresses itself. It could be brilliant. It could be absolutely fantastic. The writers could have outdone themselves. They could have seen all the problems with how to befriend or stop Godzilla before my mind can come up with them. But this is like a bad idea waiting to happen. And I hope that it isn't. I hope that it's very good. But just on my assessment of the premise and the synopsis, I think Pillars of Eternity 2 is not going to be a very worthwhile story to experience. But that was my opinion. I could be totally wrong. People who are playing it right now, please do tell me what's going on. If you can come up with any other, maybe counter analysis to the synopsis of Pillars of Eternity 2, be my guest. Write them down in the comments. Thank you very much for listening.
It destroys the castle, it kills most of the people in the castle and leaves you at the brink of death. It's bad enough that he winds up almost killing you, but it turns out that your life is linked to finding Aethys and figuring out what he's doing.